Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and recently I've taken it upon myself to start a Cospri's Malice character for the first time ever. What you're seeing here is basically as I hit level, let's say 70 or so, got both of my Cospri's Malices on as I'm dual wielding them, and I'm playing around with different setups, combos, and microtransactions. So we do have some Gore Hero device here, which is why things explode the way they do, and I am running a pit with Beyond, or Double Beyond rather, on it. The trigger I'm using for my cast on crit is Blade Flurry, and the spells you are seeing are 2 different Glacial Cascades and 2 different Frostbolts. Now I'll go over the main setups in detail as I can in just a bit, but first of all I did just want to show you guys a bit of the gameplay of how fucking crazy this build can look, and Cospri's Malices do in general. I personally have not touched Cospri's Malice basically ever up until now, haven't really even looked too strongly at the item. I just was aware that it was a stronger version or a faster version of cast on crit these days, bypassing the half a second cooldown that regular cast on crit has for its spell proccing. Cospri's Malice only has 0.25, so it can proc up to a maximum of 4 spells per second, while regular cast on crit can only do 2. That was the kind of learning phase of my Cospri's Malice character there, and this is more or less the finished product you're seeing This is a plateau tier 12 with some Beyond Sea Witch action, and I did end up swapping into 2 Cascades, which is still what you saw before, but as well as that I now have 2 Freeze Pulses. Overall, Freeze Pulse just seemed to perform a little smoother for map clear because it would be very instant and have a pretty nice coverage, whereas Frostbolt was a bit slower and then hit further out, which I didn't really find too necessary at the end. So the high proj speed and really high damage of Freezing Pulse just seemed to pair nicer for this with the Cascade, which is for the most part our single target / AoE. Well, they're both single target AoE. I can't really tell you which one's doing better for AoE or single target. They are both really just carrying their own weight. But in any case, it does end up being kind of one of the craziest looking characters I've ever had, at least besides regular cast on crit characters from ye olden days, and you can tell why right here. Let's say this strongbox over here with the Beyond just makes, I don't know, puts Hast to absolute shame, let's just say. And it's not all that heavy on the frames compared to the Magma Orb character. This is a lot smoother. It doesn't actually destroy my computer anywhere near as much as Magma Orb did, which is very surprising, unless you get into some funkier microtransactions. Like I did say, the Gore Hero device is a bit heavier, and over here I'm showcasing a double Palace with some Monster Life, Enfeeble, Boss Life, something like that, because traditionally the Cospri's single target has not been very good, is what I've been told, and what I've seen from previous versions without huge amounts of currency invested. Mine currently doesn't have massive amounts, but it is fairly well geared, and the single target has been pretty nice thus far. This is just a bit of gameplay on a Gorge, showing you what it actually looks like to map in these higher tier scenarios at the moment. I am only level 88 right now, or 89 now, and have not yet tried out any of the endgame Guardian stuff, and still a few things to refine as my gems are level 19. Still got to hit 20, maybe get some 21s, and figure out a few other little setups here or there. But for now, I'd say that's enough gameplay. I will show you the functions of Cospri's and cast on crit and how I've set my character up. So to be quite honest, there is a lot to talk about and a lot you can actually set up and customize on a character like this. There's a lot of different ways you can go with ascendancies, skill, gear, all kinds of stuff and choices, and this is just simply my version that I've put together in the past few days, so don't take it as a be-all end-all, and customize it as you want. Maybe you want to change ascendancy, maybe you want to wear a shield, different gear setups, all kinds of stuff, different skill setups too. But to start with, I am a Scion. Now my thought process behind the Scion was I really wanted to have some reflect protection, as well as some nice crit, because these weapons do not have very much crit. They only have 5.5, so that is why a lot of the time people run Assassin, the Shadow version, or for me, I decided to go Scion so I can still get the crit while also maintaining some cool stuff from Elementalist like Reflect Protection. And that's because I wasn't really going to have a lot of Leech in the build. I couldn't really envision a way to get a lot of Leech without being Pathfinder and running Vinctor, or without being a berserker, but I really didn't like the idea of starting all the way over here on this side of the tree with berserker when you need such a steep dex and int requirement, as well as a lot of the cooler stuff on this side of the tree. So the weapons themselves are Cospri's Malice. Now they are jeweled foils, and I've got some giant skins over the top of them. And they've got a bunch of stuff: cold damage, cold dispels, attack speed, some crit. But the important thing is trigger a socketed cold spell on melee critical strike. So you put some cold spells into your sword. Over here we have Freezing Pulse, and over here we have Glacial Cascade. And you can then trigger these every time you crit with anything melee. So that applies to my Whirling Blades and also my Blade Flurry. So every time Blade Flurry crits, one of these spells will come off as long as you crit with, whatever weapon. If I crit with this one, then the Cascade, the Freezing Pulse is going to come out, crit with this one, and the Cascade is going to come out. Now, there is a 0.25 second cooldown, as I mentioned, so you can only fire out 4 Freezing Pulses at a single time, 4 Freezing Pulses per second from this weapon, and 4 Cascades from this weapon. And that brings us to our main Cast on Crit setup in the 6th link. It is Blade Flurry attached to Cast on Crit. We then have some crit and some cold penetration, and I then have Glacial Cascade and Freezing Pulse. Now, with the Cast on Crit support, you can only have 2 spells cast per second because there's a 0.5 second cooldown on the trigger. So whenever you crit with your Blade Flurry, you can fire out a Freezing Pulse, and then it gets put on a 0.5 second timer, which you won't be able to cast again until it expires, and then when you crit, it can come out again. However, when you put 2 different spells in there, they are on separate cooldown timers. With one single attack, so let's say your first hit of Blade Flurry, you can only proc one spell though. So it'll pick Freezing Pulse, let's just say, and then your second Blade Flurry hit, if it crits, can pull out your Glacial Cascade. They then are both on 0.5 second timers, and when that expires, then Freezing Pulse is going to go again, then Cascade is going to go again, but at the same time, your Cospri's Malices are alternating and attacking and shooting out at the same time as well. So in the best case scenario, if you crit with this foil, let's just say your very first attack, you will shoot out a Freezing Pulse and a Freezing Pulse. So 2 different spells, or 2 spells from different setups at the same time. Your second foil then crits and with the second attack, and you'll shoot out a Cascade and a Cascade. So 2 different attacks once again. However, these have a shorter shorter cooldown time, so then you fire out more from these, but they do have the downside of only being able to be supported by 2 sockets, and overall it should still be a net increase to have basically 2 Cospri's Malices instead of just Vegan Daggers or whatever, or just building around one spell, and as well as that, dual wielding instead of having a shield, as far as I can tell, is going to be a net increase because you then have another 25% output of spells, or more even really, as opposed to just having your 3 setup of spells and a Lycosidae, for example, you could do, or a Doriani's Catalyst. There are plenty of options if you don't want to use 2 Cospri's Malices, because at the moment they are getting a bit more expensive, so if you can only get one, the build will still function really well with a Lycosidae or a Catalyst, but I think the optimal setup is having 2 of them and then alternating with Blade Flurry. Now, you may say, what about Cyclone? Cyclone's also pretty good, but it does require then a bunch of movement speed, and the direction of your attacks is less controllable. They kind of go all the fuck over the place, which is good and bad at times. I've just found Blade Flurry to be more reliable, and I don't need as much movement speed, so I'm not running any Quicksilver Flasks. So hopefully that kind of clears up how Cast on Crit works right now, and the Cospri's Malice foils. You can read a bit more about the Cast on Crit on the wiki, for example, though, but that's about the best I can do to explain it. And now I'll go over what the build, how it's actually built and what I've done. So we are focused on Freezing Pulses and Cascades, and we do have currently 2 of the Freezing Pulse jewels for 4 additional projectiles, the 2 Threshold jewels. I'm not sure they're both even necessary. I've been playing around with the idea of only having 1 because this basically just gives you a bit better AoE to have all 4 splitting out, or all 5 at this point. And I'm not sure it's that necessary. It might be better to just have a nice solid cold damage duel, which then helps your single target out. If you'd rather do the Frostbolt action, you simply put Frostbolt in place of your Freezing Pulse and then have those threshold duels as well. As far as I can tell, those are the main skills you really want to be using. You can use things like Vortex, Ice Nova, Discharge, but they're more AoE centered and you won't necessarily get as good single target with them, which is what I've been trying to focus on. And then besides all that confusing bullshit, the actual gear isn't anything too confusing. We do have a Star Conjurer as always with a Ice Golem buff effect, which for me is very important because my crit, my accuracy is actually pretty hard to fill out on this character. So if you're struggling to fill out accuracy, then yep, one foil and a Lycosidae is a really good solution. At the moment I have 84 accuracy, I pop a Golem and I have 90, which is good enough for me. I'm happy with that. And I also am struggling with links because both of these take up 3 sockets each, meaning I'm really struggling for links. And I don't even have enough room to put a second golem anywhere, so I've been running around with 2 ice golems. As you can see here, that is courtesy of our ascendancy over here. If I could get a second golem, I'd probably put a lightning golem in, so that's up to you if you can fit it in. So the other links at the moment are Orb of Storms attached to Arcane Surge, which is a good damage boost. Power Charge on crit helps us sustain for boss fights, but otherwise Assassin over here sustains power charges through mapping by itself all the time, basically. That's just for boss fights, and it's somewhat important there. And then we have Blood Rage, which, you know, questionable, you can use, but once you get Valpact, which I just then got at about level 88, 87, it does become tougher to use Blood Rage with the no regen aspect of things, but it's definitely still doable, and it is nice for clear speed, just for huge attack speed bonuses. We then have over here Whirling Blades, faster attacks, Fortify, and Frostbomb. Frostbomb, of course, just good for our damage single target, drop that onto any bosses and shit. And then we have Ice Golem up here, Herald of Ice, Blasphemy, and Frostbite. So currently all I'm doing is reserving that much mana. Hatred is a good option as well for your cascades, but it doesn't do anything for Freezing Pulse. You could go a second Curse, for example, with Ellie Weakness or Warlord's Mark. I've been toying with the idea of dropping Frostbite altogether for Warlord's Mark because it's pretty good sustain, because at the moment all of my sustain comes from its Zeri Flask, and that has been good enough, especially because I freeze and kill everything almost immediately all of the time, but there may come a time when I want some Warlord's Mark, so we'll keep our eye on that, and that's up to you guys to decide. At the moment, about 5k life, and I will be hitting 5400 once I fill these 2 out. And if I had a Belly of the Beast, I'd be running it right now, and that would put me at almost 6k life. But I have a 6-link Carcass Jack, so that's what I'm going with, and that does help for our Cascade out. So I think that's still a decent choice. And like I said, pretty customizable, up to your own beliefs, choices, all that sort of stuff. The rings over here, I tried to get accuracy on, so accuracy on your rings goes a very long way. Just some crit multi on the amulet and a bunch of int. You can get accuracy everywhere, try and get it, but yeah, otherwise just life, attack speed, life everywhere. So I'll have the gear posted, I'll have it linked, and I'll have the path of building. Now when you're looking at the path of building, it is going to be kind of hard to see your damage, because none of these have a DPS that actually matters. When you look at the main setup, so that's this one here, there's Freezing Pulse, Blade Flurry, Glacial Cascade, you have your 3 skills to pick from. Now if you pick Freezing Pulse, it does 64,000 average hit, and it can proc twice per second. So at maximum, Freezing Pulse will be doing 130,000 damage for you. You look at your Cascade, it's doing up to 40,000, let's say, twice a second, but then Cascade has, you know, multiple different stages where it can cascade and hit a monster. So that's different damage as well, but double that, let's just say, for a tooltip. And then you look at your Freezing Pulse over here, which is attached to weapon 1. That's with Cold Pen and Controlled Destruction at the moment. That one does 56,000, but it's on a 0.25 second timer, so you can have 4 of these in a second. So your maximum output from those is 200,000, let's say. Then your Cascade over here is 35,000. You can have 4 of those in a second. So your absolute maximum output, if you have 8 attacks per second with Blade Flurry, which we currently don't quite. Where is it? There. if you have 8 attacks per second and you crit every single one of those attacks, it's 4 from one weapon, 4 from another weapon, 2 from the chest, and then 2 from the chest as well. So it's kind of hard to figure out, and it's also all about the maximum possible procs and all that. So you got to try and stack your attack speed to get to that stage, which seems to be doable in the end, and I might still be able to fit that in. But I'll just go over the passive tree lastly before I finish up this video, because holy shit, it's long. So when I started leveling the character, I did just go over here, and then straight over here, and then up here, here, let's say here, then over here. Then I went down this way, and this way, and then started going this way. Now, by the time I got to the shadow thing over here, I got rid of this stuff down here. And in the end, when I got to Valpact, I decided to respec this entire side to go over here, because it does end up being somewhat necessary at about tier 13 plus or tier 12 plus, just for, well, sustain and ease of mapping. Bear in mind, if you want to use 2 threshold jewels, you do have to have int circles, so you're either going to this one, or this one over here. So try and rush those when you're leveling. I leveled with pure Frostbolt up until about 40, and then I went cast on crit. If you want the easiest possible leveling experience, use Freeze Pulse or Frostbolt with your threshold jewels, and wait until level 67 or 68 for the Cospri's Malice, because the cast on crit early on isn't really worth it without them. Just wait and use self-casting shit. Hopefully that's enough for you guys to figure the build out or try out your own variants around Cospris. I will hopefully have some more shit for you guys of this, endgame and bosses and all that, in the next few days, showing you how the build's going. Dare I say, funnest character this league so far. It's been pretty good. I have been enjoying it, and I will hopefully enjoy it for a couple more days to come. Cospri's Malice, a pretty solid item at the moment. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and see you next time.